In this video, I will explain how Ferdinand Magellan set out on a daring plan for the first circumnavigation of the world. You will learn about the dangers the crew had to survive and why this journey changed the world forever. Ferdinand Magellan, a sailor from Portugal, wanted to accomplish something monumental. He believed it was possible to circumnavigate the world by sailing westward. In 1519, he convinced the Spanish King Charles V to provide him with ships and men. His idea was risky, but he was determined. On September 20th, 1519, Magellan departed Spain with 5 ships and about 270 men. The ships were named Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, and Santiago. They sailed towards South America to find a way around the world. It was the beginning of a perilous journey. The crew sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, which took weeks. Storms and waves made the journey tough, but they reached the coast of South America. Magellan was searching for a passage to the other side. The men were growing increasingly impatient. At the southern tip of South America, Magellan looked for a way through the land. After many weeks, in 1520, he found a narrow waterway that is now called the Strait of Magellan. It was dangerous, with rocks and strong winds, but they managed to pass through. Now they were in the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean was much bigger than Magellan had thought. For months they saw no land, and supplies grew scarce. The men ate leather and rats to survive, and many fell ill. It was the hardest part of the journey. Some men had had enough and wanted to turn back. On the San Antonio ship there was a mutiny, and it left the fleet. Magellan remained strict and kept the others together. Without all the ships, the journey became even more difficult. In March 1521, they reached the island of Guam in the Pacific. The crew was relieved to see land at last, and they traded food with the locals. Soon after, they arrived at the Philippines. It was a glimmer of hope after months of suffering. On the Philippines, Magellan met the people and formed friendships. He exchanged gifts and tried to convert them to Christianity. A local chief became his ally. It seemed as though things were finally improving. But then, Magellan became involved in a conflict between 2 tribes. On April 27, 1521, he fought on the island of Mactan and was killed. The locals overwhelmed him with spears and left him behind. His men had to continue without him. After Magellan's death, Juan Sebastián Elcano took command. Many men had already died, and only 3 ships remained. They had to continue, even though they were weakened. The journey was far from over. The fleet reached the Moluccas, also known as the Spice Islands, in November 1521. They loaded cloves and spices, which were valuable in Europe. This was an important stop as it was one of the main goals of the journey. Now the focus was on returning home. The Trinidad ship was in poor condition and stayed behind in the Moluccas. Only the Victoria and Concepcion continued, but the Concepcion was later burned because it was too damaged. Now everything depended on the Victoria. It was the last ship with any hope. The Victoria sailed across the Indian Ocean, another long and dangerous stretch. Storms and hunger once again took their toll on the men. They had to sail around the southern tip of Africa, which was extremely difficult. But they didn't give up. In May 1522, they reached the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. The waves there were massive, and the ship nearly got destroyed. Elcano kept the crew together, even though they were exhausted. They were almost at their destination. After Africa, they sailed along the west coast back to Europe. The men were sick, and food was nearly gone. Only 35 of the original 270 men were still alive. It was a struggle to the end. On September 6, 1522, the Victoria arrived in Spain, the first ship to circumnavigate the globe. Elcano and the 17 survivors were celebrated, even though they were exhausted. They had done what no one had believed possible. The journey was over. The circumnavigation proved that the Earth is indeed round. It also demonstrated how vast the oceans were, far larger than anyone had imagined. Maps became more accurate, and people gained a better understanding of the world. It was a giant leap for science. The cloves from the Moluccas brought Spain a great deal of money. Even though only one ship returned, the journey was a success for trade. Spices were as valuable as gold at the time. Spain grew richer from this journey. Magellan himself did not return, but his name lives on. He had the vision and courage to set out on the journey. Elcano completed it, but Magellan is still regarded as the great visionary. His dream came true, even though he didn't live to see it. The journey opened the door for more discoveries and trade. Ships now regularly sailed around the world. Countries like Spain and Portugal became even more powerful. The world became smaller and more connected. The men who returned had gone through a lot. Many had died from hunger, disease, or battles. The survivors were heroes, but also scarred. It was a journey full of sacrifices. After the circumnavigation, sailors searched for better routes across the oceans. The Strait of Magellan and other passages became well known. Trade between Europe, Asia, and the Americas grew. It was the start of a new era. The journey cost many lives and ships. 4 out of 5 were lost. Only 18 men made it back. Still, it was a milestone in history. The success came at a high price. Thanks to the journey, scholars were able to better estimate the size of the Earth. Earlier ideas, like those of Columbus, were corrected. The world was much bigger than most people had thought. It helped to understand geography better. Juan Sebastián Elcano became known as the man who completed the journey. Without him, the Victoria might not have made it back. He received fame and recognition from Spain. His name is now alongside Magellan's. The circumnavigation showed that humans could conquer the oceans. What once seemed impossible was now a reality. Sailors became bolder and explored more. The seas were no longer a barrier. The journey marked the beginning of the age of exploration. Countries sent more ships to explore the world. Trade and colonies grew everywhere. It was a time of change. The Victoria was old and damaged after the journey and was no longer used. The other ships had already been lost along the way. They had fulfilled their purpose, but didn't survive for long. Their story lived on, however. In Spain, children were told the story of the brave journey. They learned about Magellan, Elcano, and the Spice Islands. It became a legend everyone knew. The circumnavigation inspired many. Today, we remember the first circumnavigation as a great adventure. It showed what humans can accomplish when they are brave. The story is told over and over. It was the beginning of something new.